Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Graham Dorley, and you join me here at Response Motors for the GT3 build. As you probably saw last time, we installed the front end of the car, and it's looking really awesome. Everything's dried and set, so all of the panel bond here, or structural adhesives, rock solid, really, really good. This thing is on for good. I hope to never have to remove another front end on a GT3. Let's pray. Now, next, we move on to some of the body work. This I've been dreading for a while, but you got to do what you got to do. So when the accident happened, I'm assuming this was the second accident, the tire and wheel came back and it bumped this panel, which I already straightened out a bit. I fixed a lot of this stuff right before we put that front on, but it hit this rocker panel. So what you've got here is, unfortunately, there's a mount for the fender, and I'll show you guys actually. So this is what the rocker's supposed to look like. This is our donor car. So you can see the mount for the fenders here, and everything is kind of nice and straight. So this is what it's supposed to be. So when we come back to our car, we can see that's not the case. So this is very much bent in, though otherwise seems okay. It's on the driver's side, it's mostly just right here. We've got a little bit of damage back here as well. This is where the car must have landed on something. So it bent and banged up this flange where the outer fender and rocker panel meets the body. So not super, super important because the structure is actually underneath this, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out and fix this anyway. So what we've got to do is fix this rocker, and also on the passenger side, I've got a similar problem, but it's a little bit worse. So my strap's holding the front end down. You can see here the rocker's a little bent, and it kinked out there's a little frame piece here, and there's the door close skirts fit in there. So this one might actually, you might be able to kind of save it, but you can see it's torn here. So what I'm going to be doing is cutting off a section here, removing it, and then taking it off of our parts car. So cut this off, pop that off, and install it onto this car. Now, I'm very much not looking forward to this. I admittedly don't do a lot of body work, so mostly do mechanics, structural stuff, but paint and body I've done, though not to this kind of level. So we're gonna give it a shot though. We're gonna see how it goes, and I'll take you along for the ride. So let's get started. Let's pull off these rockers, open them up, and see what we got going on. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get in here and get some of the seam sealer out of here. So you can see this is all filled with seam sealer. There's a little bit of a crack here between the two panels. Straighten that out. But once we get the seam sealer off from in here, we'll be able to figure out where the fasteners are. And then I'll probably grind the seam sealer off here. Then I'm going to make a cut on the panel, trying very hard just to remove the outer skin, which if you look in here, there's the outer panel here, and then there's an inner structural piece. So this is the structure. The car here, which is fine. So this is really just cosmetic. And then if we look way down, you can see there's more aluminum extrusion here for the structure, and then this is all the outer box section for the rocker. Luckily, it's mostly fine, but if you don't cut out this section, the way Porsche does it at the factory is the entire rear fender and quarter and A-pillar, well, roofline and A-pillar, this is all one piece, which I really don't want to replace just for this. So I'm gonna splice this one in and probably just fix that under there by taking it off the other car. So let's start removing some seam sealer. So as expected, you can now see since I've ground away a little bit of the seam sealer and some of the panel bond that's here. This is the outer rocker, and it joins up here, and then it's all one big piece. So rather than take the entire side off the car, it's actually, the damage doesn't go back very far. So I'm probably gonna splice it right here, cut it down, and then join it up at the bottom. So I'll just remove this one piece. Got the old piece off, got it here in my hand. So it came out pretty easily. I already kind of cleaned up the back a bit. So now I'm gonna clean this up, get out these rivets. I thought these were spot welds, but turns out they're actually rivets. So I'm gonna get these out, so we got some nice holes, clean this up, and get ready for the new panel. And in the meantime, after that, I'm going to get this cleaned up a little bit more, and then I'm actually gonna put it on the other car, trace out the panel, cut it, and then fit the new one on here. So let's get going. So we used the piece from the other car as a template. So I cleaned it up, got it fitted up on our donor car. I'm gonna mark off the cut and then pop this guy off, and we're gonna clean it up, cut it off, and pop it on the other car. So let's get to it. All right guys, so I cut the panel off, cleaned it up in the back, and then I mocked it up by some clamps. Fits pretty well. I left a bit of a gap on purpose so I could weld in here. So maybe a little bit more of a gap than I wanted, but not too bad. So what I'm actually gonna do now is I'm gonna cut a sliver off this panel, and I'm gonna put it behind these guys. I'm gonna tack it in place to act as like a little patch behind so that I can weld in here. So generally, we got good alignment between a couple of the holes. The tops just doesn't seem to go in super well, but it fits and it aligns with the rest of the side skirt. So maybe there was just a slight difference when they drilled, but pretty good alignment. The other holes are fine. So I'm gonna cut this guy now, patch it up, and then we'll keep on trucking. So cut apart the other panel, and I made a little patch pad. So this guy is gonna go behind here. Fits in nice. Now I left some space because there's a seam here where the two panels overlap, and there's some panel bond behind it, so I don't want to interfere there. So I'm going to glue this in place with their favorite panel bond, clamp it, and let it sit, and then I'll stick the other panel over top, and we're going to use this as a back to weld down and get everything nice and square. So let's get gluing. So what I did is I painted on a little bit, and then I added a small bead underneath. So we're gonna go ahead. I should also mention, I sanded, used isopropyl alcohol, cleaned this. I actually sanded behind this panel, used isopropyl alcohol, cleaned that up. So we're good to go, nice surfaces. And this is really just to hold it in place for welding, but yeah, why not add some more strength. So let's get this in there, nice and firm. And then we're gonna go ahead and clamp it. And I'm just gonna leave these clamps in probably for a couple days. Okay, looking good. So we're gonna let this sit overnight at least, come back tomorrow, It needs to be clamped for, I believe, about 6 hours or so. So by tomorrow, this should be well cured. And then we'll start fitting up the other panel. Okay, it's the next day. So this is plenty of time to harden. So let's pull these guys off. That is very much on. So success. So that was good. So let's see how the other panel fits in. I got a little bit of bond under here. Let's check it out. Not too bad. So the patch panel keeps it nice and level. So we're gonna weld this up, do some filler, some sanding, some body work to it, and we should have a nice patch panel. So interestingly, I did some more research. Porsche does sell just this section down here. However, their service procedure calls for the removal of this panel, and you actually cut it right here. So you don't have to remove the entire side of the car, but you still have to cut and patch in the panel. So it's exactly what I'm doing up here. So why remove this whole piece when you can just patch this? And their replacement panel wouldn't fix this. I would have to still do the quarter panel, which is the whole side of the car. So we're gonna take this one step at a time, see how this goes. I've ordered the rivets from Porsche because of course there's special rivets for the bottom and a special rivets for the top here, and then you bond and weld this. So onwards we go. We're gonna go ahead and do this on the other side and then keep going while we wait for the rivets from Porsche. Cleaned up seam sealer and panel bond on the donor car. I also removed the inside piece on the pink car, which was a chore to say the least. Then I cut up our marker panel. So I took the other one, trimmed it down, and I'm gonna mark this guy just like I did on the other side to cut this panel off. So first I'm gonna remove the front piece here, and then we're gonna look at removing this inner piece. So unfortunately, Porsche sells this piece here, which we need, only with this entire front A-pillar outer skin, which would involve a bunch of removing of things if you wanted to put it in one piece, or you could do what Matt Armstrong did and remove it from the new panel that Porsche sells, but it's still a few $100. So I'm gonna give this a shot and just see if I can literally cut out the section of the body and then remove this panel on a bit nicer than I did on the other car. Because I really want to save this and I can't drill from this angle, so I'm going to have to do it from the other side, drill it out best I can, and then we'll spot weld it in because a lot of this is steel. But first I'm going to remove this panel because this is the important one to make sure we don't get this damaged. So I'm going to get that off, and then we'll try to get this guy off best we can. If not, then I can always buy that panel from Porsche. But let's give it a shot. After much headache, I removed the structural piece that goes inside of here because it was all bent. And then I spent about 2 days getting it off of the donor car. So you can see I had to like slice open part of the body, pry it out. I was doing as much as I could to remove the metal around the piece from the car so that I wouldn't need to damage the actual part. But I certainly did a number on the actual vehicle body. And after all this, concluded quickly that it was not worth it. I could have just bought this piece from Porsche and it came with that structural part, but oh well, I'd already kind of gone down that rabbit hole, so I figured I might as well pull it off. So now we're gonna fit up the piece I removed from the parts car, which is this steel structural piece, which as I mentioned took days. Now Porsche used a bunch of different attachment methodologies here because there's several panels put together. They actually bring one in pre-assembled with this piece and then they mount everything together to the body. So you've got an aluminum panel down here. This is the lower rocker panel. So you can see it comes up. And then you've got steel here, and then you've got more steel. So it looks like what they did is they used panel bond and spot welds. So rivets with panel bond, spot welds, rivets with panel bond, and then more spot welds. And up here they used a combination, because this is also steel, of spot welds and then rivets here. And then they used panel bond all in here because this is aluminum. So what I'm going to do is finish cleaning this up, and then I'm going to put some weld-through primer on it and some panel bond, and we're going to get ready to attach this guy. We'll probably drive in the rivets down here because I already kind of bent this back into shape to fit, and then we'll clamp this, get it welded up, rivet in here, and that should be it. So let's get going. Got it welded up, ground down the welds, got the bond set, rivets done, and then I went ahead and sprayed a 2K primer on this because I'm going to be repainting the whole car anyway. So cleaned it up, just wanted to keep it from getting rusty while we continue our work. So it looks pretty good. I've got these clamps on here for the bond just to be double sure, so they'll sit on for a little bit longer. But now we're going to start mounting up this panel. So now that we've got the structural bit to align everything, we're going to set the panel in place, trim down anything on the panel so that it fits nice in here, because I bonded in a patch panel the other day. Didn't really show that on video because I showed it on the other side. So got my patch panel nice bonded. This is well hard at this point. So I'm going to fit it up, trim it, and then we're going to go ahead and bond and rivet it in. Got the side panels installed. Adhesive's dried. Looks basically back to factory. You can even see here underneath, I straightened up back to the way the factory has it. There's a little curve of this flange. Could not be happier how this came out. Looks really, really good. So we got the new structural piece mounted in here, got the primer set, adhesive on. Now all we have to do left is weld this gap. So I'm just going to do an aluminum stitch weld, and then we'll prep it for paint. But I'm going to leave that for a little bit later because I'm just going to do all that welding kind of at the same time. And then if we look at the other side, the adhesive's still drying over here. I have the extra clamp on just to give it a little bit more, but this one came out just as well. Fit really nice. All the rivets basically went right back in factory location. You can see underneath here, you've got that nice curve. I cleaned up and then shot some primer on the structural piece to make sure everything's okay. Nicked it a little bit with this clamp, but I'll fix that. That's going to be it for today's video, guys. We got a ton of work done on the GT3. We finished installing both those rocker panels with bonding, riveting, and a little bit of welding for that structural piece Up next, we're going to start doing the seam sealer on the front. We got a lot of structural welding to do on the bottom and the inside of the car so we can get everything ready to go to start prepping for paint. So if you haven't done so already, click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications because we got new content coming every week.